hold on. What would you do if your wife told you she murdered someone?
How do you know she hasn't?
Because you're the biggest gossip ever. There's no way you wouldn't have been like...
Am I? Or is that all a cover?
Indeed. Yeah. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee. And Jeff's drinking tequila.
and I'm Jeff drinking tequila. And before we start, just a quick warning.
Warning! I was drinking wine. Who knows?
This episode is going to have spoilers for The Vanishing Cyclist. We are going to discuss the whole series here.
If you haven't listened yet, look for the link in our show notes.
All right, Dee, let's talk real quick about what this podcast is before we discuss it.
All right, so this podcast, it was released earlier this year, 2026. The host is Jane MacSorley. There are 6 episodes in total, each around 20 minutes long. Really, really short. But Jeff, give us a quick rundown of the story.
Yeah, so this story is basically about this guy, Tony Parsons, who went out for a charity bicycle ride through the Highlands of Scotland, where he is from. Back in 2017, his family was at home waiting for him to get there, but he never showed up. So the sort of question of this podcast is how did he just vanish? He just disappeared completely with no trace of what happened. So, all right, Dee, we listened to this. Before we jump into talking about what happened, before the discussion, what's your take on this? Yay or nay?
Overall, I'm yay.
Okay, that seems qualified and fence-sitting.
If someone said, give me a podcast to listen to, I want something quick, I want something like intriguing and something different, I could say The Vanishing Cyclist. Like, I would recommend that. But I have some... Yes, that's what I would say for now. Until we dive deeper into the discussion, I think there's some elements of this that I didn't love. I think the story overall of Tony Parsons was very interesting, and it's not one we've, like, that type of story isn't one we've come across at all before. What about you?
I thought this was generally very good. I think this was a good podcast. I would recommend this. There are some small things that about the way it was, the production, that I have criticisms of, but overall, yeah, I agree with that last point. I think what I maybe liked about this the most was this was an unusual story, something very kind of different. I also appreciated that it covered a whole kind of arc of a story with a couple of unexpected bits and twists in under 2 hours. It was very efficient, very economical.
We do enjoy efficiency and an economical story.
Yeah. But why don't we just start. I have some questions.
Is it about the accents? What did you not understand?
No, I understood, I would say 90% of the accents. I feel like over the lifespan of this podcast, I've gotten better at the Scottish accents, the Irish accents. The Welsh is still hard. I'm going to say this, Welsh. Struggle with the Welsh. But
I still go back to that very first podcast I made you listen to, and you were like, what are they saying? What are their names? What is happening? Oh.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know this part of the world, not Scotland, but there are some similarities to Scotland and Ireland in terms of the weather, in terms of the roads, the kind of rural areas. At the beginning of this, Tony Parsons sets out on this 103-mile bike ride, and he basically takes a train to this town. Was it Fort William? We talked about it in our Time Machine episode, and then he's basically riding the route home. And he leaves Fort William in the afternoon. It's raining. They use the word, I believe it's like dreck. There's a lot of words in Scottish for rain. This is one of them. I did look it up to make sure. It's D-R-E-I-C-H. Sounds miserable. And dark. This is the end of September. It's the last weekend in September. So it's quickly dark and raining, and he's on a narrow road. Does it? Why wouldn't you wait for daytime? Why wouldn't you wait for a nicer day?
I mean, he's not in California. Like, when's the nicer day coming?
I guess I thought that was my like California perspective of like, well, it's sunny 90% of the time. Why don't you just wait
Yeah.
a few hours?
Yeah, you've lived in California too long.
I definitely have.
Yeah, like it's like you could do this. Well, sorry. So there's a cycle similar-ish to this in the Ring of Kerry, which I think is 106 miles long. Like it could be lashing rain. It could be dreary and dark. Like it's during the day, but like it could be you don't know. It could be in the middle of summer and it's still going to be, it could be dreary and dark, could be beautiful. You just don't know. So like, I think you're just living in California too long with that question, to be honest.
Okay.
I get what you mean in terms of like, why wouldn't you wait till the next day? Like, why wouldn't you just take a break at that point?
I want to be clear. I'm not coming in, I guess I am starting off criticizing the victim in this story, and I don't.
But I think you're trying to gather the context is what I'm getting from you.
I'm trying to understand, why, like what was going through his head? Like why, like he had opportunities to stop. He made some choices at the beginning that I didn't understand.
But so I understand because like obviously you kind of know like, okay, they've seen the CCTV, he's here, they're kind of laying in thick that people kept trying to tell him, don't leave this place.
Yeah.
And he did. And then he wasn't seen in the place that was 6 miles away that he was aiming to get to. But I think you have to get into the marathon mind that you have. If you run and you're like, well, I could stop here for water or to go to the toilet or whatever, or I could just keep going because I really want to keep going and I don't want to have that stop until, like, my plan was always to have it at the next stop, regardless of what I'm coming up against. And I know that mental point that I'm getting to, like that in my mind is the milestone. So he stopped, he had the cup of tea or whatever, the coffee, and he knows like that's the milestone he's getting to. So from my perspective, like that's what I'm getting here. I don't know if that makes more sense to you when you think about it from that perspective, but
it's probably not true that this very morning I was out for a run at 5:30 and I pulled my hamstring at mile 1 and decided to keep running 2 more miles despite the fact that I have a very difficult 10K on Sunday in the mountains. I did, yeah.
Can you
so
walk?
I guess
like,
I should maybe.
Did you properly pull it, or did you just like?
I had tweaked it last weekend and kept running, but it wasn't very bad, and I tweaked it worse today.
You're a bit of an idiot, aren't you?
So, you're making a good point. Yes.
About you being an idiot, or about like having that mental.
No, what am I doing questioning this man when I do stupider things? Much stupider. Also.
But I can understand what you're questioning. I don't think you're questioning the victim in like, you're not like putting blame on him, but I think you're just trying to understand that like his mind at the time. And I'm just trying to put it in the perspective of you with something like, I don't understand why you would go out and run for that long so many times in your life. That seems bonkers to me.
And he did a lot of smart things. He was covered in lights.
Mm-hmm.
He was very bright. Like he made himself visible. And he had a clear plan, and it sounded like he wasn't necessarily trying to like do this all in one shot. Like he said he was going to stop. Like he wasn't going to try to go through the night. He just wanted to get to this point, right? Like he had a stopping point in mind. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, that hit me in that first or second episode where they were talking about what happened to him. And it just, you're right. I should absolutely, like, this is probably one of the people in all the podcasts we listen to that I have the most in common with in terms of mindset and stubbornness and maybe making what in hindsight is a questionable decision. But yeah, he did a lot of things right. He did a lot of smart things. I think this is also why I came in favor of this podcast as like a strong story and a compelling one and one that I would recommend, because I think this is one that I related to in a way of like, I get this guy. Like, I get what he was doing. Like, this meant something to him. He was doing it for charity. Yeah, he had been through some stuff, and he had been, like, trying to find a new challenge for himself, too, right? Like, he was trying to push himself. And this also, like, it seems like a reasonable challenge. 103 miles is tough. Like, that's a hard bike ride, but it's not like riding across the Alps, right? Like, it's doable.
He's through the Highlands. Like, he's not cycling through Sunnyvale.
I guess I don't know what that even entails. Like, how high are the Highlands? Are these mountains? Are these proper mountains?
I would just be like,
they're hills.
Just, you know, the way you've studied English numerous times in your life, just consider the use of the words like Highlands.
Well, they could be like a high plateau. I don't know. I'm Googling Scottish Highlands. They look like big hills. They look like mountains. Some of these are AI images.
So
it's hard to tell.
They're
very green and pretty.
He's also like in his 60s, and I think there's a lot. Like, there's a lot in it. Do you know, one of the things that I found compelling about this podcast, you know, we obviously hear so much about Tony, as we should, and his family, and like how great he was. And then we hear about the brothers, the McKellars, and how great apparently they were, and like how sound they were and how generous. And I appreciated that there was that balance, that it wasn't a case of, you know, because I think there was a way you could present this story where it's like, this man is like cycling for, you know, charity after being through this trauma, like on his own, and these boys are out drinking and blah blah blah, you know, like there's a really dramatic way you could present the story.
Sure.
And they didn't do that. It was a case that they were drinking. It was a case that they had actually been in the same place that evening. And they had been drinking, and they did hit him, and they did kill him, and then move his body and bury him. But I felt like the way the story was told at least wasn't, like, the juxtaposition really was already there. They weren't overplaying it. They weren't like highlighting it. They weren't adding to it, because I think one of my criticisms of this podcast was I felt like often it was too dramatic in its presentation, which I know is kind of contradictory to what I just said. I'm aware of that. But as in, it would be like, and then he had a cup of coffee. Or whatever.
The Dateline voice thing.
Yeah. And I don't, like, there's no need for it. Like, this story is unique, and it's got drama in it. Like, it's got that already built in, and actually just presenting the story is in itself enough. So I appreciated that it wasn't added to by further villainizing the McKellars.
I think that's right. I think it kind of flirted with that line, particularly I think in its presentation of Tony Parsons. I think at the beginning it made him out to be a little bit of a saint. And maybe he was. But it falls in that kind of true crime trope of the kind of like perfect victim. But you're right. I think the McKellars, they were more balanced. Let's talk about Caroline Muirhead. So that was the twist. So she was the girlfriend of Sandy McKellar, one of the twin brothers who killed Tony Parsons. I think we said it in our time machine that we anticipated that he got hit by a car. Don't know. Maybe if you'd asked, we probably could have gotten to the person who hit the body. Sure. How this got discovered, I couldn't have possibly predicted.
No.
And not just, there are like 3 parts to this story that I found.
3 parts and 6 tiny episodes.
3 parts, I think, in the same episode. 3 parts within like the same 5-minute span. Carolyn Muirhead has this boyfriend, Sandy McKellar. They met on Tinder. And he confesses to her that he killed this guy. And the context of that is something like she like asks him, like, it's something about like sharing your like everything, about like one of those like early relationship kind of conversations of like, tell me something that you've never told anyone or whatever. I don't remember the context of it, but it was something like that. And it's like, and he just up and admits to this woman he just met on Tinder. I don't know how, maybe they'd been dating for a while. But like, yeah, I killed this guy. Me and my brother killed this guy and we buried him in the middle of nowhere. So that's incredible thing number one. Incredible thing number two is he takes her to the spot where they buried the body. Why would you do that? And then number three is she has the wherewithal, and I guess she's a forensic pathologist, so maybe that's part of it, to drop a Red Bull can or something at the spot because it's in the middle of nowhere and you'd never find it. And that's how they end up, like, she's able to lead the police to where the body is buried. That's so wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Why
are you making that face?
Because I was trying to do some sleuthing as you were speaking. But what this is saying is they were engaged. And it says that they had a 4-month relationship and that she stayed engaged to him while gathering evidence against him. I didn't realize that. Because I was actually going to ask you.
That wasn't really in the podcast. Yeah.
It wasn't in the podcast. And I was actually going to ask you, I was like, did I miss, like, how long were they together? And, like, what? I don't know.
It didn't sound like very long. So.
It didn't.
It sounded like, yeah.
But then also, like, yeah, as you said, like, I think it was presented, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a, we're so in love. Tell me all of the worst things you've ever thought or done. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Don't. Like, just don't. And nobody, don't. And so, anyway, so they're getting through that stage. And they're having that moment in their lives. Great. And he actually tells her. And then she's like, obviously acts as if it's fine. Does he say, do you want to see where I buried the body? Because that's kind of more sadistic, like as if he's getting a thrill out of it. Or is it her that's like, I mean, where did you put him? And he shows and it's like, well, it's okay and blah, blah, blah. And I just
what's
don't
that
know.
Conversation?
Yeah.
How do you go from we killed this man and buried this body to taking her to the scene of the grave? And I guess that's a criticism, or maybe it's a limitation of the 6-part 20-minute episode format of this. And I think we've said this about BBC and I think CBC podcasts before that are very short. Sometimes they kind of leave you wondering about these parts of the story that they don't go into in detail. That episode could have been twice as long and maybe covered more of those details.
Okay, sorry, Jeff. This is on Wikipedia. This is wild. Several weeks later, he mentioned that there would be a development starting near where the body was buried, and so he would have to move the body. McCallagher began asking questions of Muirhead, such as questions about burning a body. After this, Muirhead went to her parents' house where they contacted the police and met with detectives. Realising that she didn't know specifically where the body was buried, she left the house in the early morning to return to the estate to McCallagher. She asked to go clay pigeon shooting as he had previously stated that where they went shooting was close to where he had buried the Parsons. Once they were there, Muirhead told McCallagher that without knowing where the body specifically was, she wouldn't be able to help him. McCallagher then showed her the gravesite, where she secretly left a Red Bull can stamped into the ground at the site as a marker before contacting the police again.
Well, that fills in some gaps.
That fills in a lot of gaps. Now, this is also Wikipedia.
Okay. Do you remember one of our very first episodes when we used to do those questions of the week?
Yes.
We had a question related to this.
Like, where would you bury a body?
No. Your husband tells you.
Oh, yeah, we did.
I killed someone. And what do you do?
Jesus. Can't remember my answer.
Well, what would your answer be now?
I don't know.
You've now been married for 2 more years.
But I probably wouldn't remember by now if he had. So, I would just forget. No, I think I probably said at the time, like, I can't keep. I wouldn't be able to keep.
Sure.
I'm not. not good with those big emotions. I wouldn't be able for it.
You wouldn't have the wherewithal to do what Carolyn Muirhead did. Let me ask you this other thing
Hold
that
on
I
a
thought.
second. That felt very loaded. Well, she didn't keep the secret. She can say she was in love with him. It was 4 months. Like, it's very different to being in a 20-year relationship with someone.
I mean, I think what she did was, it was incredibly difficult and brave.
Oh, no, I know. But what you just said insinuated that I wouldn't have the wherewithal to do what she did. And I'm saying, sorry, if I had just met someone and they told me this, I'd be like Nancy Drew in it. But
okay,
that's not the same as like what you just presented. Wait, hold on. What would
No,
you do if your wife told you she murdered someone?
How do you know she hasn't?
Because you're the biggest gossip ever. There's no way you wouldn't have been like,
Am I? Or is that all a cover?
Indeed. Yeah.
There's another element of this that I want to talk about. So that's, I guess, an area where this very short podcast left some things out. But one thing it included that I don't remember quite hearing said this way, but I really appreciate the way they did this was, okay, so Sandy and Robert McKellar, these twin brothers, are drunk driving late this night, hit this cyclist. He may or may not have been dead after they hit him, but he was certainly fatally wounded at the very least. Then they have a decision to make. Do they call it in right there? Or do they try to cover it up? And if they had called it in right there, we know that they most likely, Sandy would have gotten about 6 years in prison. Robert wouldn't have gone to prison. Instead, Sandy got 12 years in prison and Robert got 5 years and 3 months. Which is a pretty significant difference. And they made that decision late at night, in the rain, on the side of the road, drunk. It's one of those things of like, you have no way of knowing how you would act in a situation like that. You would hope you would do the right thing. You would hope. And we got, like you mentioned earlier, we got that bit about like, these were generally like well-liked guys, seemingly like stand-up, like popular. They were deer stalkers. Mm-hmm. That's not a profession that I was familiar with. I Googled it. Same thing as deer hunters in the US, but they're called deer stalkers there, I guess. But they're like guides, like they like guide hunting parties. Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting detail because it's not always as clear cut as that, I think, in other cases of like it's this versus that, depending on what you do in this moment. But it was a very like this black or white decision. I mean, for Robert, it's 5 years in prison versus no years in prison, right? Like that's a huge difference.
Yeah. I think there's also the element of just the guilt. Like, look, the guilt is there regardless, whichever decision is made. But the hold of the guilt and the secret is there. You know, that pressure must be really, really hard. And I think that maybe is why Sandy McKellar ended up telling Caroline so early on in their relationship.
You think that's why you think the guilt was getting to him?
I mean, I would assume that that's the only reason you would say it to someone. Is like you felt like, well, like if someone is like, presumably in this situation, like if they were, you know, really in love, whatever, and he's like, you know, I need you to know this about me, and if you can love me regardless, then whatever. But I mean, look, it's not a situation that anyone wants to be in. I think it's a situation that I empathized for the family of the two boys, the McKellars.
Sure.
So much empathy, obviously, for the Parsons, that goes without saying. And for Tony Parson, but I did really empathize for the McKellars and for the McKellar brothers, and like they just made a shitty decision, and it sounds like they were great lads and they were really helpful to their community, etc. And yeah, they just should have gotten a taxi home. But you're in the Highlands also. I don't think it was addressed here, but how many taxis are in the Highlands? Like, how often do people have a few drinks and drive home? Like, in more rural areas, you don't have Waymos, you don't have Ubers around the place. Like, it's just not a thing as much. And I'm not saying this to excuse the behavior, but I'm just saying it to more like contextualize it. Like, I think it's easy to say like, well, you should have gotten a taxi. I'm not saying that they should have had a couple of drinks and driven, but I'm just saying, like, at the same time.
But sure, no, I hear you. I don't know that. I mean, I don't feel great about that, but I think another thing that I thought this podcast did very effectively. I don't feel great about sort of even the sort of pretense of making any type of excuses for what they did. I feel like that's a little bit of what you're doing in a qualified way.
I'm not making it an excuse for the fact that they decided to move a body and bury a body and put a family through worse than they would have gone through had they found out he had been hit and like he had died. I'm not making any excuses for that. I'm just contextualizing that there was a mention of they should have got a taxi or whatever. And I'm just saying that, you know, in that area, my assumption from what I know in rural parts of Ireland is you don't have Uber or whatever on, like, there's no apps on the phone, there's no taxis running around. That's all I'm saying. Should you be drink driving anywhere? No, you shouldn't.
No.
If you hit someone, should you be driving away? No, you shouldn't. Should you be moving their body and burying them? No, you shouldn't. Like, absolutely not. But I'm just trying to add some, like, contextualization for, because I don't think that was there.
That makes sense. I think, well, and actually now that you say that, it made me remember something that happened, I think, a little earlier in the podcast when our host is driving that road and is pointing out the fact that they don't see any cyclists. And I mean, that's, you know, a small sample size. They drove it that one time, but supposing that's true, and supposing this is a road where you just don't encounter a lot of cyclists, like the odds of, you know, coming around a corner or coming over a hill and there being a cyclist there, I mean, maybe it's more likely that the should they have gotten in that car? Should they have gotten drunk and gotten in that car? No. But maybe the most likely thing that they would have done on most nights is hurt themselves, which, okay, like they made a choice and they had the consequences. But maybe the odds of hitting a cyclist are so far-fetched and wildly improbable. I mean, what we don't know is, is it true that like there's almost never a cyclist on this road?
That's petering on the edge of blaming the victim, though. You know that? I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. I've seen it before, like in rural parts of Ireland, going for runs and stuff. And like they did mention that the area is like a tourist trap.
Yeah.
Or like tourists come through it. Like I've gone for runs before, so I don't know if it's a thing here. I feel like it's the opposite here. But in Ireland, like, especially if you're on a country road, you run, or you'll run at least and walk like against the traffic. So you can see the traffic coming towards you. It's like I remember running one time in a rural part of Ireland against the traffic and like coming to a bend and a car flew around the corner. He was nearly annoyed at me for being there. Flew around the corner. There's like also pebbles like on the ground, like nothing hit me, like, but like this guy was, and this is like Sunday morning, like this is a Sunday morning run I'm going for, and this guy's out with his family or whatever. People don't expect it because yes, there aren't that many. Yeah. And well, in Ireland, I'd wonder if it's in the Highlands as well. You'd want to see the speed limits in Ireland, Jeff. It's wild, like insane.
What do you mean?
You could have like an 80-kilometer speed limit on a road that is nearly a one-lane windy road, and you have 100-kilometer speed limit on like a motorway. Like it's wild. Like it is wild. So people drive like maniacs, and then you've got like cyclists, and you've got runners and stuff out there as well. So like it's just, yes, like people aren't used to seeing it, so you just assume. And if they're so used to the roads and so used to driving home, they're like, I could drive that like the back of my hand. And you're like, yeah, but anytime you get in the car, anything can happen. Like nothing is going to, no drive will be the exact same.
I think that makes sense. I think And it is the same thing here, where you're supposed to ride your bike with traffic and run or walk against traffic for that, so that you can see what's coming at you. But with a bike, you're moving so fast, you're supposed to go with it. The other piece of this, and there aren't a lot of pieces of this, it's such a short podcast that we haven't talked about, but is I thought that the podcast captured really well was what it was like for the family, for the wife, Margaret, and then Mike and Vicky are the son and daughter, and how they're just waiting for him to call, waiting for him to walk in that door, and
sleeping with
like
the blinds open in the living room. That one really killed me.
Well, and then this other twist of Mike was a cop who worked missing persons cases. Mm-hmm. So he knows the drill. He knows what to expect. He knows how this goes and how this usually turns out. And I don't know, like this had several of those elements where, like, if this was, you know, a movie, or like it almost felt like an episode. Sometimes, and this, not to diminish the story, but sometimes it did feel like an episode of Murder, She Wrote, of just like how kind of neat and tidy some elements were. I mean, the fact that Sandy McKellar ends up dating a woman who is a forensic pathologist, that's who he confesses to, of all the jobs she could have had. And that the son of the victim had been a cop who worked missing persons cases. It's almost like it strains belief. But then I also wonder, like, is it a coincidence that he was dating a forensic pathologist? Or, you know,
was he exuding?
We don't know. Well, no, but like, what, like,
that was a bad joke.
Question of like, was he looking for someone to confess to?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, he has to have been, if, like, they were together 4 months before she went to the police. So he must have told her, what, at least 3 months into it?
It's real short. It's a real short time span.
Really short, yeah.
I think the more that we talk about, there's some elements of this that I wish they had gone more into, like that relationship there with Carolyn Muirhead. But by and large, I think they snuck in a lot of details. They, I think, spent enough time with the family getting to hear like what their experience was like. And I think you really felt for them and what that 3-year period of not knowing was like. But like those hours and days and weeks right at the beginning, I thought were captured really effectively and powerfully. I don't know. I think this was a well-told story. I think it was, I mean, this was really kind of heartbreaking. It didn't overly demonize the criminals. Like, it presented their choices as, but it also, like, when they chose to plead, was it a plea deal or whatever it was, they avoided the trial. They pled guilty. I forget exactly the logistics of it, but how that sort of denied the family a chance to have kind of the day in court.
That was interesting to me, because I feel like often what we hear is people don't want to go through the details, and they don't want to have to wait to hear the like sentencing and stuff. But I can also understand, like, part of me wonders like why the family aren't due like having to be told their story, you know, like if someone is going to plead guilty, like, should they not have to stand up and say like, this is what happened, you know? Should that not be part of it? Or at least if the families want that. Right.
Yeah, when we talked about the Gilgo Beach serial killer and how the way he pled guilty, in a way, like, denied the victim's family something, right? Like learning more that they maybe wanted to know. And I think that was maybe part of the case here, although it seems like we know most of the details at this point, but being able to have that moment in court, like, is maybe a form of closure, like a form of sort of catharsis over this. Because, I mean, particularly when they sat there for those 3, I mean, the same thing with the Gilgo Beach story, of where it was years and years of just not knowing what happened to their family member. I mean, they kind of needed some type of event that they were just sort of denied in the end.
There's no winners here.
No.
Can we briefly touch on the fact that the police did a really good job here?
So it seems like they did a great job. There was that moment where it seemed like they knew where the body was and they decided to pack up for the night.
Okay. So, yes. And you know what was particularly weird about the presentation of this for me. So first of all, they said they were packing up for the night, and they obviously made sure everything was covered, and they had to be respectful of the body. And it was and I thought immediately of the Sophie Toscan de Plantier fuck up in West Cork, that whole plan. So I was like, well, that was good. And then the detective was saying basically, and the next morning, after we had some breakfast, I'm like, I know this is your everyday, but don't leave the breakfast in. Don't mention breakfast in the interview. Because
that being said, sure.
We're talking about a body and a dead man, and they're talking about breakfast. I don't understand the editing of that. Why are we talking about the breakfast? I don't feel like the breakfast should have been left in.
I think you're right. That being said, the woman, the I don't know what her job title was, but the woman they were interviewing from the police department who was there at the time, I think she showed an incredible amount of, I think, tact and grace and respect for Tony Parsons and the family. And I thought you're right. Overall, I think this was a model example of good police work. It does seem like the police never would have found evidence 3 years earlier, right? It was covered up pretty effectively. So it wasn't like they missed something. It wasn't like they really screwed up back in 2017 so much. One last thing I wanted to ask you about. I was talking to you the other day on a bright sunny day in the middle of the day that I was listening to this while I was riding my bike, and I was thinking about the irony of that, and it crossed through my mind, because this is something when I have gone out for runs before, because I think I've brought this on this podcast before, but knew someone who went out for a run in the snow and slipped and died. And it's a different circumstance than what happened here, but it's, those types of things happen. There was just a story about someone running an ultramarathon a couple days ago who died running the race. And again, they didn't get hit by a car. I think they had a heart attack or something. But this maybe doesn't describe a type of thing that you would do. But do you think this changes your behavior? Do you think twice about doing something like this? Hearing the story?
I think you're maybe forgetting your male privilege right now with this question, to be honest, because...
Do you think I should change my behavior?
I have always had strong feelings about my husband cycling in the dark home from different places. Yeah, I mean, he'll go and meet friends and cycle back, or he'll even when we were in Ireland and he'd cycle home from work, and it would be dark and it could be raining or whatever. Very normal, very common to do. And I would just have anxiety about it, I suppose, because I'm oh my God, I don't want him to die. So, but yeah, for me, it's more of an element of, I would be more comfortable cycling in the dark than I would running in the dark, because I feel like I don't know, I can cycle faster. I don't know.
You shouldn't. It's more dangerous.
Well, I know, but running, I'm very vulnerable as a woman running in the dark.
That's fair. If you're being pursued.
Yes, that's what I mean. I've done it a few times. I cycled to Megan's last summer and had wine and then cycled home. It was fine.
Do you have lights?
I do have lights.
Well, all right. We've talked about it. Where do you sit now? Do you feel like this was worth the time?
I do. I actually do. I've convinced myself that it was more worth the time than I thought it was.
Wait, sorry. I'm sorry. You said you've convinced yourself. I had nothing to do with that.
No, you had nothing to do with it now.
No.
I often just need to say things out loud. Maybe I need to speak to myself more.
Do you just want this to be a solo venture going forward? Should I just be producer quietly?
I don't know.
Just Dee goes in the closet and talks to herself about podcasts that she's listened to and reckons with her own opinions and
can you still
tries
edit
to change
it?
her mind. Can I edit your thoughts? No. I would charge a lot more for that service.
You can stay.
As much as I maybe don't love listening to my own voice and hearing my own opinions sometimes much later.
Yeah.
It does help to have that balance.
No, I mean, look, I think sometimes you say things like, okay, like there was like this journalistic integrity, or like, you know, how like the police like balance things out. Like there's elements of things that you said that I was like, okay, fair enough. And then you were like, oh, has it questioned how you would, you know, cycle your bike at nighttime? And then I'm like, wow, 203 episodes in, and you still forget that you're a white man and I'm a white woman, and it makes
That's what privilege is. That's the definition of privilege.
But like still, like you're still there. Does it ever go away?
Then it wouldn't be privilege.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Is that it? Have I missed it?
Kind of. Yeah.
I feel like you're supposed to be aware of it though, at some point.
Some would say that I have come a long way from where I was and just have a lot further to go. Miles to go before I sleep.
Miles to go before I sleep. Who's that?
Speaking of poetry.
Is that James Heaney?
That's Robert Frost.
Robert Frost.
Oh.
Yeah. Walking through the woods on a snowy evening.
Yep, that's it. It's a great poem.
It is a great poem.
If you want to hear more talk about poetry,
I don't.
If you want to hear us discuss podcasts, but in rhyming couplets,
no,
in iambic pentameter,
never happens.
Maybe a sonnet, maybe a limerick.
Nor him.
Go to patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time.
Do that.
It is all poetry.
Listen to him when
all
he
the
says
time.
That. No, it's never poetry.
It's so much better than an all poetry feed. Although that would be kind of fun, but it's not that.
It's not that.
Either way, go check it out. Patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time. Lots of fun clips. There's also swag. And the best part is you get to support us, which we really appreciate. Helps us so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope
I've
clarified everything he said, because half of what he said was wrong. Okay, thanks. Also, leave us a comment. Tell us, like, what did you think? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Jeff? Do you want us to speak in rhyming couplets, or do you want Jeff to go away and just edit this podcast and have me sitting here talking to myself in my closet wardrobe, as we would say at home? Tell us what you think. We're open to feedback. Jeff loves a bit of criticism. And don't forget 5 stars. You could even just give 5 stars for me. Like, even if you don't like him, you could just give 5 stars and in the comments be like, this is just for D. And share the podcast with friends and family. Thanks so much. Thank you so very much for listening. Okay, bye.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.